Welcome to the Burnout Room, a podcast about burnout, effective leadership, and well-being in nonprofits.
I'm Dr. Courtney Keim, a workplace wellness researcher and professor.
And I'm Sarah Burris, an organizational leader and nonprofit wellness advocate.
Whether you're facing burnout, leading a team, or working to build a healthier workplace, this is your space to find support, community, and solutions for any organization.
We're so excited to bring our listeners an excellent and rich conversation with Dr. Liz Todd Byron. We had some technical issues with my camera feed, so while you'll hear me during our chat with Dr. Byron, you'll only see my picture if you're watching the video of our podcast. We really hope you enjoy it.
On today's episode, we have Dr. Liz Todd Byron, the Executive Director of Experiential Learning and Community Engagement at Bellarmine University. She has a BA in French and History from Transylvania University, Master's in History and Teaching from the University of Louisville, and a PhD in Leadership in Higher Education from Bellarmine. In 2020, she established the Center for Community Engagement at Bellarmine and oversees strategic partnership development. As a former high school teacher, she loves to teach career and first-year introductory courses. And outside of her work, she is passionate about her involvement in many community organizations. Liz has 2 children and loves to run and listen to audiobooks. So Liz, welcome to the Burnout Room.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, we are honored to have you.
Most definitely. We've really been looking forward to this conversation. And in the lead up to our talk today, we asked you to define burnout in your own words. And you said, if you ever played with Play-Doh and pushed the Play-Doh through the doll where the hair comes out at the top, that's burnout. One has so many inputs that they cannot even fit anymore into their head. It squashes creativity and traps a person in to-do lists without an end in sight. What a visual. Like when I read that, I was like, yep, that's exactly what burnout looks like. Can you say a little bit more about why that represents burnout to you?
Yeah. And I've been grateful to be listening to the podcast because I actually have a better concept of what burnout is because of you all and the psychological background on the term. I think so often terms become buzzwords and we'll say, I'm burned out on eating this food and I'm burned out on emails. But burnout is like truly this state where in my mind, I always go to imagery because I'm a mom and I'm an educator, but like you can't take any more. Mm-hmm. And instead, it just like comes forth. And whether you're a person who knows about the Play-Doh symbol or like a spiralizer for vegetables, like it comes out and you can't get it back in to those original forms. And I think that squashes the creativity that someone has because they're just in a state of like, do, and thinking zero innovation for how to do it better, to make it more efficient, to pour into themselves because it's just like pouring out of them. So that's where I landed on burnout and my concept of it.
Absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And as a person who played with Play-Doh quite a bit and had one of those dolls, it's beautiful representation.
I love symbols.
I really like that you tied it to the inability to be able to be creative if you're burned out. One example that I love to give to students about the importance of being able to take time off. So I don't know if you know this, but certainly you've heard of the play Hamilton, right? You heard about Hamilton, the musical. Okay. Did you know that Lin-Manuel Miranda was on vacation reading a book about Hamilton for fun when he got the idea for that play? So having the time off and just being able to like get away from things allows your brain that flexibility to be able to just have space to be creative. And I think that if you're burned out and you're overloaded, like you don't really have that space for that creativity.
Correct. I find, and you said it in my bio, running for me is less so like I'm the super fit person, but rather it's this mental headspace where I'm like, okay, let me really process this. And I come back from runs so often and I'm like, that's the direction I need to go, or this is the answer to our problem. But I need that space to have clarity, or else I could be endlessly in a trap of emails. We all could, and just like go nowhere with it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a real testament to, we talk a little bit about on the podcast about setting boundaries and making sure that you have the space for yourself. So like double benefit, it is healthy to be like active and moving, but it's also like mentally healthy to give yourself that time to be able to come up with I'm guessing probably not just creative solutions for work, but like probably creative solutions just for your life and your family and the things that you care about. So it's not like you have to be working while you're running, but it's just that like having that time away allows you to be creative and flexible and thoughtful and disconnect and psychologically detach, we would say, if we were going to borrow like a researchy term, it would be psychological detachment theory that guides that. Like you need to have that detachment away from it to be able to think clearly and be creative.
I'm going to use that official term now. Chad, I'm going to tell my husband I'm going for my psychological detachment. I'll see you in 30 minutes.
Excellent.
Yes, please, everyone listening, use psychological detachment as your excuse. Say that fancy word so that you can get away for a moment.
I love it.
Liz, I know you very well because of the work that you do at Bellarmine related to community engagement. And I am someone who teaches community engaged courses and have found the support that the Center for Community Engagement has given me like crucial and critical to being able to do that work. I'm so appreciative of that support. But I know what community engagement means, but I think maybe some of the people who are listening may not. So can you talk about like, what does community engaged work really mean as it relates to universities partnering with places like nonprofits?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, when thinking about this question, I at one point did not know what it meant, and now have come to be an expert in this setting for it. But I was in the high school setting, teaching high school human geography and U.S. history. And what I found, I was 25 years old, and my students, I was in the public local county where we're in the city we're in Louisville. And what I found is I went into my classroom and I was all ambitious and I was like, all my US history students are going to pass the statewide exam and all my human geography students are going to be able to sit for the AP exam and I'm going to like teach the test and all these things. And within like days, my students were like, absolutely not. No, you cannot teach to a test in here. Like, we're not buying it. We're not interested in what you're saying. It needs to be meaningful for us. And so as I got to know them better, I saw that they wanted to turn what they were learning in the classroom into something that they could understand in their real lives. And so we initiated it with service learning with every single first year student at the school to curb food insecurity and hunger. So we worked with partners like Dare to Care and Hip Hop Cares, Franciscan Kitchen, all these food pantries and food banks. And so in that course, human geography, all of them could apply what they were learning to food insecurity in the local region. And by senior year, where they all took US history, which we already know is so problematic in the way that it historically has been taught, I was able to open it up and say, instead of me giving you the topic of food insecurity, I want you to pick an advocacy topic. Whatever you're passionate about, you need to do 15 hours of community work with a nonprofit and build toward that. So I had a student who was visually impaired who worked for the American Printing Press, that is here in the city for the visually impaired. I had students who worked, some continued on with food insecurity, some did housing insecurity to work towards affordable housing, but they really leaned in on projects and they all continue to come back. Several of them have gone into the work. Like I have a student who's in CASA. She's the director of CASA in Rochester, New York, because she started her work with human trafficking during her advocacy project. And I realized like, this is how learning comes alive. And so bringing that to Bellarmine, I didn't even realize that I was doing community engagement, but bringing it to Bellarmine, I understood that colleges, when they were created in America, they were created to be set apart from the rest of the population. They were created for a subset of the population, white Christian males, to receive an education and be these intellectuals who made decisions for the rest of the population. And that didn't work. We see for 200 years that hasn't worked, where decisions are made on a population. So community engagement, I lean into those terms. Instead of service on a population or service for a population, community engagement is truly to be built with the population around you. And colleges can really shift the narrative to be this inclusive, equity, gap closing institutions if they lean into naming issues with the community and problem solving with the community. So that is where I landed in higher ed. And I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yeah. And I think that what is so great about the relationship between, and specifically we focus on this podcast on nonprofits, like the relationship that has been built through this intentional community engagement work at universities with nonprofits and students, is that it is a relationship and it's being done with each other. So the nonprofits are benefiting from being involved in this work with students. It's not that the students are not coming in to save the day, right? They're not saviors. The people who are in community are experts. They have an expertise, they have skills, but they are in need of some help and services that the students can provide. And then the students are gaining valuable skills. I mean, I think about like a student who was in your class in high school now being the director of an organization. Like that's an amazing trajectory. So the students being able to gain those valuable skills, like we talk about mutually beneficial reciprocal partnerships. And what you just said is a perfect example of exactly what that looks like and what that means. Like that it is to the benefit of the students and to the benefit of the nonprofits that are working with the university.
Correct. Yeah, mutual benefit is a really important term. The learning outcomes, especially at any university, I think any major is enhanced by community engaged coursework. So what they're learning in the classroom can come alive out in the public. But the nonprofits, what we oftentimes don't realize, we do a day of service, and we call it service in that instance because they go out and do 2 hours and then come back to campus, and that's the end of it. It's finite. Usually sustained is what community engagement is. And our nonprofit partners tell us that those 2 hours that our students spend out there organizing files, painting rooms, sanitizing, picking up trash are projects that their team of 1 or 2 couldn't have done over the course of 3 or 4 months. So 2 hours does make a difference, is what we're coming to find, the impact that's happening on these nonprofits.
Yeah, absolutely. As a nonprofit who has had the opportunity to work with a lot of great students, many from Bellarmine, I can say that it makes a huge difference in our organization to have those students involved with us. And I'm wondering, Liz, how in your work do you engage with nonprofits to help them identify ways to meet their own mission by working with the students?
Well, it's a lot of relationship building. We don't just, like I said, we come to the table as partners. We talk about what their needs are. Sometimes that need looks like a 2 hour. So they, join our Nights in Action Day and they're like, great, that was perfect. That's all we need for now. Others are more extensive. I think of some location, let's say the Center for Women and Families, where you need to do almost 40 hours of training to be on the job for the hotline. So they need a more extensive time with our students. And usually that's an intern. So we'll send over one student who can do that training and then provide hotline services to them that will actually benefit their org. And then you have people like Dr. Keim, who their courses are situated where they have expert students who are really talented and can take on a website redesign for an organization who needs it, or marketing campaign, organizing. I know one time an accountant did pharmaceutical organization for Park Duval here in town. So there's a lot of opportunity, but we just want to make sure that it's the right fit, whether it's a course of students or one singular student or just a couple of hours of service.
Yeah, that's really great. I know with Courtney's class, we've had students help us build our nonprofit wellness initiative toolkits, and just so bright, so creative. It's really been a benefit to our organization to have been able to work and grow our programming with such experts in these students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Liz, the word you said to relationship, I think is critically important.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing community engaged work in my classes for many years, but it wasn't until we had a center for community engagement on campus and we had a director, right? You on board with your staff, that we were really able to, and through, I will say a lot of very hard work, like we really worked hard as a university to institutionalize community engagement here at Bellarmine. And so it is now woven into courses, it's woven into research, it's woven into service, like and at every level from students to faculty to staff, like there's so many different things that we had to go through to make a commitment to this work and building relationships with community partners that I'm like super proud to say that Bellarmine then received the Carnegie classification as a community engaged campus after the many, many years of hard work that we had to put forth for that. But this is not an easy thing to do. Like you do need a support structure to help you build and sustain relationships with nonprofits so that it's not sending students out and the nonprofits not getting their needs met, or maybe it's a one-off every now and then. Like nonprofits have needs that are kind of ongoing. So you need to make sure that even if it is 2 hours every year, it's 2 hours every year. Or if it's every spring semester, or maybe it's making sure that like we're sending you an intern now, but in the fall we'll have a class working with you. And like no one faculty member can like structure all of that and organize all of that. So having the center and the work that you and your staff are doing is like critically important to maintaining relationships.
And that's the group I haven't spoken about quite yet is faculty and their mutual benefit to all of this as well. Besides like enhancing their classroom learning, it also turns into scholarship. And we've seen several faculty members who are turning their work with community partners and publishing with their community partners, as it should be. And those data or the research that comes from it is going back to the community instead of like on a shelf in an archive where no one will ever access it. This data is coming back to the community, and it's an iterative process. So we have plenty of evaluation pre and post as we partner with our communities. Because we want to make sure that we're building on it, to Courtney's point, that, oh, that was not successful. Oh, that intern did not work out. It's not always perfect. It's not. But that we can maintain our trust and come back and come at it a different way the next go around. So, and she also spoke about institutionalizing the process. So community engagement, it's a part of our mission at Bellarmine. So when our students come in their very first week of orientation, they do 2 hours of community engagement. In their sophomore year, they're doing orientation modules, and they're doing things like alternative spring break and other co-curricular opportunities. And in their capstone, they do research for a community partner. So it's all tied together so that they know when they come to Bellarmine, this is what this school is about. And that's how our community partners also trust us, because they're like, they've put in, they're walking the walk. So.
Yeah, I think as one of those community partners, it's also just really nice to see students out in our spaces in the hopes that we have folks who come into our sector after they graduate with the skills that they've learned through Bellarmine. So we've really benefited from it. I was so excited to have you on because we have seen such good outcomes in our organization because of our work with students, working in Courtney's class. So yeah, we love it.
Yeah. And that's really kind of leading me to my next question for you, Liz, which is, and you've already given an example of this. I think for a lot of people who are maybe listening, and especially those who are working in nonprofits, like they may be thinking to themselves like, ooh, wait a minute, does this reduce Does this reduce burnout? Like if I have students who are coming in and helping doing the work, like, do you have evidence of that or anecdotal stories of how you know that community engaged work is helping to reduce stress or increase well-being or prevent burnout in our nonprofit partners?
I mean, that's what our evaluations say. Our partners are saying what a transformative impact our students are having on their organizations. Um, and I don't always like to use the word capacity building because that just seems like we're adding a staff member and they're taking care of that issue. But like meaningful capacity building is what I'd love to like always attach to that. I think about this student who was going to work at Kentucky Refugee Ministries 5 years ago, and I rode with him on the TARC to show him how to get there via TARC. He was work study, and he was real nervous about the position, and they started him off just like filing things in a filing cabinet. By his senior year, he was taking refugees on the TARC to their health, medical appointments, government appointments. He was riding them. And so it was just like this full circle moment where he took on this very lightweight role at Kentucky Refugee Ministries. And by the end, it was transformative work, for the org, helping these people access their basic needs in the city. So yeah, I'd say it's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great example. And I'm thinking about like what an impact that must make on the staff who work at an organization like that, who I'm guessing are probably overworked. We talk about this a lot with nonprofits and setting boundaries. How do you set boundaries as a nonprofit when the clients and the people who desperately need your services will never end? Like the influx is always there. So how do you like clock out at 5 o'clock and go home and say, it's me time now? Like it's so hard because nonprofits are so short staffed and they don't have access to the same resources. It's, fundraising is difficult. Donors, oftentimes it's hard to get donors just to like pay for payroll. Donors don't necessarily want to write a check just for like another person to work. But that's sometimes what you need is like, you need another person who's there, who can provide services, another person. Like if the student who was able to take those folks to their medical appointments meant that the full-time staff or the employees at that organization didn't have to do that work. Like the work was able to be spread out and maybe help to lessen the workload a little bit for the people who were working there.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is Bellarmine also considers, and I think other institutions are considering this too, how we can support our nonprofits, not just with like creating these experiences, but oftentimes we'll be a sponsor at their annual gala, like understanding that we need to pour into them financially as well, when we can. And then the other component that I think higher ed is moving into more accessibility and equity is that Bellarmine acknowledged the fact that our incoming class this year was 55% Pell recipient, which is high financial need for our students. And with that knowledge of our growing population that is working part and full-time jobs, we decided to establish a community engagement access fund where our nonprofits are often unable to pay their interns because they just don't have the funding. Bellarmine is taking career fair savings, like anyone who sponsors or has a table at our career fairs, SGA, our student government organization, they all contribute to this pile of money that goes directly into the hands of students who otherwise would be needing to work their part or full-time job to support their tuition or their family needs or housing needs. And so this makes sure that social capital and that experiential learning is accessible to all students, not just those who are able to take on an unpaid internship. So that is also a way in which we're helping nonprofits in a different direction, not just capacity building, but truly financial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really big piece, especially coming from a small nonprofit. Like sometimes you just don't feel like you have the capital to be able to bring somebody else in. And sometimes it doesn't feel good to have an unpaid intern. It feels like you want to be able to compensate those folks because you know that they're doing valuable work. So being able to access funds through that community engagement fund is really critical and really awesome, to be able to provide that to folks and to ensure that students are getting compensated for the great work that they're doing.
Right.
So for nonprofits or other organizations who might be listening to us talk about how great all of these students are, what should those nonprofit leaders do? Like, how should they go about getting connected to university resources in their area?
Mm-hmm. I mean, two angles I would take is, and it depends university to university. For example, here at Bellarmine, career development and community engagement are situated under student affairs. It can look different on different campuses where those offices are, but I think that's where you reach out first, because those offices are going to be able to connect you appropriately with faculty members who might be in the same umbrella of work, focused on the same social justice topic that your nonprofit has mission alignment with. So I recommend to reach out to those services on campus to get started. And another angle, of course, is just relationship with a unique faculty member. And Courtney, I think you'd agree with me, prior to having the Center for Community Engagement, Bellarmine faculty have been doing community engagement year for decades, but it was siloed, attached to a faculty. So when that faculty member would retire, that partnership dissolved with it oftentimes. But now having a center allows for those to sustain even when they depart. Or we think, oh, Volunteers of America is great in criminal justice, but it also could be over here with nursing, like broadening the scope of the partnership so that it's tied into the university in a lot more ways so that we don't lose it at any point.
Yeah, and that's why I think the idea of just reaching out to, if you're not in the Louisville area, you find a university that's near you and you reach out to somebody who is in student affairs or a community engagement office if they have it, or a career development office if they don't. But finding a person that you can just have a conversation with, even if you're not exactly sure what you need or what students, like you're like, I don't know, do I need accounting students? Do I need like communication students? Like that's where the relationship building and the conversation can really help, is you're connected to somebody at the university who knows, like, I know who the faculty are in these different areas and departments who are looking for a community partner who would like to do a community engaged class. Here's a community partner that would like to get connected, but they're not quite sure what their needs are or what to ask for. That's really where like the contact at the university can help you have those conversations and figure out what those answers are and then connect you to the right people. Like I don't want anybody to think like, oh, I can't contact a university until I have an exact ask, because it may be very hard to figure out what your exact ask is, right? Like, I don't know, Liz, how many people call you with like a very specific ask that you just, directly connect them when no conversation needed? Probably not very many.
Right. Yeah. Usually they just come in like, this is what our organization does. Like, what can we do here? And the other thing I like to name too is, let's say Nazareth Home. That's a senior living nonprofit right here in town. Well, Nazareth Home doesn't just need healthcare workers who want to work in the geriatric realm. They also need accountants, to Courtney's point. Do they need marketing? They need activities people. So I try to tell the nonprofits when I meet with them, if you're going to create an internship description, first of all, make it evergreen. And that's like a term we use where it can be used year over year. Don't put in language that's like, and this ends, this is finite, but rather we have an open internship into all the way into the future. And then make it to where a student who has a business background, a student who is in healthcare, a student who's in education, a student who's in the arts and sciences, any of them could see themselves in the role. Like it may make it very broad, like we're looking for all these, any of these skills that would benefit our organization. And you're going to get some really quality candidates coming out because they're going to be excited about what your mission is and go for it. And so that's proven quite successful. And there's a lot of job platforms. Bellarmine uses Handshake. So ask in your local area, what are the colleges using as the job platform? See if you can get on there so that college students are seeing your name pop up, thinking about opportunities. because those internships, I can tell you, turn into full-time employees. We have, yeah.
That's me.
Yay! We have so many students who have turned into full-time employees at the nonprofits they're working at, which is such a success story.
Yeah, so I was in business school at the University of Louisville, and there was a job opening, and I was in a business class, and they were like, "Okay, you have to mock apply for one of these jobs on whatever our platform was at the time." And there was a job, and it was like the Kentucky Psychological Association receptionist, and I'm like, "I think I'm actually going to apply for this," and I did, and here I am, 18 years later, still working here. I did get an A in the class, by the way, for getting the
Yes.
job. So
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
so yes, absolutely. Put your open positions on those college websites because those are the people that you want to see come into your organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll also add, like, it's not just internships that is a way to connect. Like, that can be fantastic ways to connect. And I think that when we talk about like capacity building or very easily, that's something you might think of to help ease the burden of workload is, oh, if I had a student here working in an internship, that could help. But it doesn't have to be that. Like, community engaged work could be working with a faculty member where they're collecting data in your organization for their scholarship purposes that even if you had never before been interested in like working on a research project, you can be a co-author in that project and be involved in that project. So it could be research related, and it could also be related to a class. As I said, like, that's what I've been doing with my two of the classes that I teach. I've been teaching as community engaged courses, which is the community partner coming in for an entire semester and working with a group of students in that class for an entire semester. And those can take all kinds of different forms. Obviously, Liz, you can talk maybe about some of the different ways that classes can get involved, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an internship. It can be other avenues.
Definitely.
Yeah. Something that we started 5 years ago is a faculty retreat in May, where they have the space to create a community engaged course. It's a 3-day retreat that we've been able to offer them. And I know U of L has fellowships like this. Many institutions are offering fellowships and writing retreats that allow faculty the space to create these courses. And presently, we actually have an educating character grant through the Lilly Foundation at Wake Forest, where we have 3 teams of faculty fellows, student fellows, and community partners. And they are working together for 3 months to create a syllabus for a course that is going to be offered the following academic year, which is so rich. So, for example, a history faculty member right now is working with a community partner called Unmarked Graves, where they're taking records from Catholic, and we're Catholic University. They're taking marriage and baptism records of Black Catholics and their unmarked graves in Louisville and adding markers to their grave and writing biographies, whatever they can gather about these individuals, that their lives are honored and celebrated across Louisville. And so this history class is going to transcribe those primary documents that the church has and help to make this project, like, help to mark more graves. I mean, what a transformative opportunity. Does that mean they have to be at the gravesite every day? No, these students can take these documents. They're do this online. Not all the work has to be at the site. They can take on these monumental projects for nonprofits that are going to move the needle effectively for that organization. And that's just one example.
That's incredible. And I just keep going back in my brain to just like how grounding it must be for a student to be doing work like that in their community, and how after graduation they will carry that with them no matter whether they go into a for-profit corporation or if they stay in the nonprofit sector. Like, they will always have that, and so when they're speaking in rooms they will have that, they will be thinking back to those projects that they did with their community partners, and they'll be using that information in whatever rooms they find themselves in employment. So I just think it's so incredibly beneficial for the student, and just equally as important for the nonprofit organizations who get to help foster that growth in those students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That gave me the goosebumps a little bit when you were telling that example. And I know that's just one of many examples that are here at our university, but to the credit of the work that we are trying to do here, it really does go back to that mutually beneficial relationship and how, as Sarah said, can students learn something that they'll remember for their life, and how can you make a substantial impact for a nonprofit or community partner that really does like make a difference. I try to not get too Pollyanna, and I know that's good. Like, I know if you don't know what Pollyanna is, just Google it. It's a very, very old movie, but about this girl named Pollyanna. But sometimes when I'm talking about the community engaged work, I do start to feel like I'm sounding like a little too naive and like, we're making a difference in the world, but it actually really is true. Like, I do think that you can make a really substantial impact for a nonprofit with just a small thing. Like, what seems like a small project can make a really big difference.
Totally. Yes. I agree wholeheartedly. And I love what Sarah said as well. Like the skills, when I think about what I want to do with students is I just want to help them be good people in the world. That's like the end of the sentence. Just be good people in this world. And the skills that we teach their community engagement, there's 5 that we highlight. Cultural humility is critical. We want them to spend their whole lives trying to understand other people better. And you'll die not understanding what someone, I'll never know what it's like to be a male, right? I'm not a male. I can try to understand a male perspective, but I won't. And so cultural humility is just this constant yearning to learn more about someone else's experience. Ethical practice, we want them to go into these spaces with the knowledge that the community partner is the expert and how are you entering that space ethically. Collaborative action, we want all of our students to be able to work with one another, work with people that they've maybe never worked with before, work with different age groups, work with different cultural backgrounds, religious traditions. 4th is critical reflection. They should never just go out. And many times I know growing up, like sometimes I'd volunteer somewhere and then I'd be like, okay, and now going on about my day. But if you don't critically reflect on what you just experienced at a site or with the unmarked graves or doing website design or whatever you might, this toolkit that Courtney students, if you don't reflect on what you've done, you can't carry it into your existence beyond. And it might not be what you do as a career, but it can be how you engage in society post-graduation. And then our 5th, integrated learning, is that students from any background, a psychology background potentially, or a nursing background, education background, it doesn't matter. Bring that expertise. How beautiful is the world because we come together with all these different content specializations. If we all were one, boring, right? Instead, it's like all these different ideas. Oh, okay, well, let's talk about this topic from the lens of healthcare. Let's talk about food insecurity from a healthcare, social determinants of health. Or let's talk about food insecurity from an educational lens. What can we do in the classroom to ensure that our students are able to learn because they have access to food? Or what can we do with food insecurity from a criminal justice background? Like what are our systems in place that are keeping people from even accessing food in their neighborhood of the city? So Courtney, I'm totally on board. I'm like, it gets me worked up that this is it. This is the answer, everybody. It's community engagement.
Yeah, we should. Yes, let's be Pollyannas together. Absolutely.
I agree. I want in on this group. I would also like to be a Pollyanna, please.
Yes. Just so you know, Liz, you talked about you wanted our students to be good people. Sarah and I have said more than once already on this podcast, just don't be a jerk. Like that's one of the takeaways that we have.
Don't be a jerk.
Just don't be a jerk. Just be a nice person. To speak about like how something that's in a class can make a difference. If you've listened to the podcast, you know that like we end our podcast episode every week with our ripples of gratitude. And that idea for the ripples of gratitude came from a Bellarmine student working on a community engaged project in my class. And that idea of this employee recognition system that could be built by organizations, I know some of my friends who are practitioners have adopted that in their workplace. We put it on our podcast hoping that it inspires other people to be thankful in their own lives. Like this is an idea that a student had in a class that is continuing to make an impact in ways that he probably never even dreamed of that would actually happen. So yeah, something that can happen in that class that is going to carry them on, hopefully through for the rest of their life, and to be able to know that they came up with something that small but meaningful impact.
Thank you, Hudson.
Thank you, Hudson. Again.
Again.
We've thanked Hudson publicly, but we'll thank him again. Yes. And then the last thing that I wrote down about what you just said too, Liz, was I think a lot of the work that we do, have done historically with our community partners is through the lens of our expertise. So we do get siloed. I am going to approach things with my psychology colored glasses. So if I go work with a nonprofit community partner, I'm going to think about the psychology behind it. But the problems in our world are not siloed. They are interdisciplinary, and the solutions to those problems need to be interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and having good, intentional, community engaged work with a local nonprofit partner means that you can get out of those silos and help to solve the problems that need to be solved using a multi-pronged approach.
Correct. Agreed. 100%.
Agree.
I love it. I love everything that you said. I wrote down all 5 steps. I'm going to put them on a Post-it note in front of my computer because I think they're all great. I think the point that you make about critical reflection is so important. And I think that that's something that Courtney and I have talked about on the podcast before, is just like, that's something that even nonprofits are really bad at. Like we're constantly on to the next, on to the next, on to the next, and don't take a moment to reflect back on the positive outcomes, the ways that we can grow, the things that we can be doing to move our programs forward, and the things that we should be doing to ensure that our people have the support that they need to do the next project. So I loved that critical reflection piece as well. And I think all nonprofits can take these 5 things and implement them in their own workplaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. I think there's just a lot of opportunity to bring good people together and all learn from it.
Yes. Yeah. Liz, you talked a little bit about your background as a teacher, so I'm going to guess that you probably have a story to tell about this, but can you think about your own experiences? Have you had an experience with burnout, or are there ways that you prevent burnout given your role previously and currently as teacher, also mother, educator, community leader? Like, is there maybe a story that you can tell or how you approach it personally that can kind of be like a lesson to the people that are listening on ways that they may be able to also recognize burnout either in themselves or figure out like how to prevent it for themselves?
Yeah. I love this. I love being at this because when I first originally talked to you all, I was like, oh, have I ever experienced burnout? And I think it was so suppressed down in me that, like I almost just glaze over it. But I'll tell you just a brief story about myself. In 2016, I was teaching in the public school system, and I was trying to get pregnant and was unable at the start. And then spontaneously went to this doctoral reception for a friend. And by the end of the reception, I was applying to get my doctorate. So thanks a lot, friend I went with. No, I love Diane. Shout out, Diane. So I left and I was like, told my husband, I was like, I'm going to go for my PhD. I've always wanted to go for it. And I think I can do it. I want to do this for myself and prove it, prove that I can do this. On the day I got into the program, which was like 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. And so I was like, alrighty then. So I'm teaching full time and pregnant and doing my doctoral studies. And I found out I was having a girl, and I was like, I'm going to show this girl what women are capable of. I'm going to do this doctorate. Now, was it hard? And did I cry every weekend driving to class? Sure did. Sure did cry every weekend, when you're leaving your baby. And then 2 years into the doctorate, it took 4 years for my doctorate. 2 years in, I had another baby. And my cohort of doctoral students was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, life goes on, folks. Okay, so this 2016 I have the second baby in 2019, and then COVID. So I'm teaching full time. I am doing my doctorate. I have two babies at home. My husband goes to work because his job calls for that. And so I've got 30 seniors on a call, trying to keep them engaged, breastfeeding, little toddler, pouring. I mean, like, I don't know what happens. Do you see it? Like, it's like this dark cloud that I'm like, did that happen? Was that all a dream? And then I decided to leave high school and go to Bellarmine, like take this leap of faith. So it was like all these things that happened going into 2020. But here I am. I'm still here. But I really had to think about my priorities to get to that space that you all are talking about. Like, how did I work through it? My priority is motherhood. It always will be. My kids come first. And I tell them, my daughter, if you ask her, she's 8 years old now. And if you ask her, I say to her sometimes, Charlie, why do I work? And she knows the three things. Well, because you want to help the community and educate students is one. Two, you want to provide opportunities to me and Bobby. That's my son. And three, you're a really smart woman and you have a lot to offer the world. And so that's like what we've talked through, because I want her to understand why I work and why I spend time away. Because it's all these things that women have to do in this world. And so there's my story. Is that helpful?
Yeah, so we can mark today as the first time I've cried on the podcast.
Yeah, no. Whew.
That was that's really amazing. And like, you did show your daughter like what women can do. So congratulations for that. And I think it's a great testament to what women do, which is
Everything.
I don't want to say doing it all because it's very cliche. But it's true. It's like, it is really doing it all, but doing it all like thoughtfully and intentionally and with integrity for the right reasons. Like, that's, I think, what your story really offers is you challenged yourself. You overcame substantial obstacles. Look, it took me 5 years to get my doctorate and I only had one kid. So like, you really put yourself in some very like challenging situations, but you did, obviously that you did it in a way that was ultimately super, super successful. So I think I'm about to pull out also, Mark, this is the first time that I pull out an Andy Bashir quote on this podcast, but like, Andy Bashir sometimes talks about like your why, like you have to know like what your why is. And I do think that is what a lot of nonprofit leaders and other people listening to the podcast will think about. Like, you are so clearly articulated your why for your work. Why do I work? Mm-hmm. And having it be three simple things, and your kids know what those things are, and you know what those things are. Like, I think that can certainly get you a long way to preventing burnout. Mm-hmm. Or dealing with burnout, or when you start to feel burned out, to know what do you need to do to fix it. So I don't necessarily want to say you were burned out from high school teaching and that's why you quit your job. But some people who are burned out leave their workplace if they feel like if their workplace just isn't going to change, they'll leave. Or if you're staying in your workplace, are there ways that you can set up those boundaries, reduce your workload, increase your sense of community, make sure that you have the rewards and the control and the autonomy that are part of your job that help you to not feel that burnout. Just sounds like you were such a great like case study in going through burnout, but then also knowing your why and having those values grounded you for like how to deal with it when it occurred. So thank you for sharing that. That was amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting me tell my story. And yeah, I think I just have to thank so many people because that sounds like, okay, look, she did that. I couldn't have done my doctorate without my children. I couldn't have done it without my spouse. He was so supportive along the way. All the grandparents in our lives for our children, so my mom and dad, my husband's mom and dad, sister, like it's a community who actually got that doctorate. I fully understand that it was a community who got me across that stage. Um, and that's the same in the workplace. I feel very attached to, I'll walk down the hall just because like I need to hear Jackie laughing. That's someone on my team. Or, I need to talk to some of the other women about their brand new babies, or just get a joke for some of the younger professionals. I need to hear how old I am. They tell me how much I'm disconnected from reality. So like that, but I love it. I love my team. And so there's a lot of people who are around me who help me avoid burnout because of the relationships that make this so worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. And community is a big component of prevention of burnout. Like that is one of the things that we know from the research. So,
Yeah.
so you're doing the right thing officially, according to the research.
Thanks, Courtney.
Yes, gold star, Liz, for doing the right thing.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
I love your story. I think that so many of us women go through so much to maintain like that, standard of motherhood that we all want to maintain while also being, the person that we want to be at work. So I think hearing your story, being able to hear that you did those things successfully, that you maintained your relationships throughout that they were strengthened by going through that, um, is I think it's just something that a lot of women will be able to hear and relate with, and hopefully will be inspirational to women who may be going through difficult times right now.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
You can do it, ladies.
You can
I
do
can
it.
do you.
Girl power.
That's
You
right.
can
from
do it.
from the Pollyannas, girl power.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic conversation. I knew that it would be. We will share things in the show notes for today about the Center for Community Engagement at Bellarmine. And, if there's any other resources that you have about how folks can get connected to community engaged work, if they're not here in Louisville, how to find community engagement folks in their local universities in their area, that would be really great. Or any other resources you have, we'll link to those in the show notes. But yeah, just thank you again for being here.
No, thank you all so much. I can't wait to continue listening to the podcast. I feel like I've taken away so much. I just enjoy your all banter. So thanks for what you're doing, for the community. Yeah.
Thank you. Courtney, that was such a good conversation. I feel like I took so much out of everything that she was saying. Those 5 principles that she laid out that her community engagement students are following are things that I really think that nonprofits should also look at and take very deeply into heart, because it was just wonderful. I loved everything.
Yeah. And I actually am really glad that you said that, because I've never thought about that before. So those 5 learning outcomes for community engaged work, I have to do 3 of the 5 in my community engaged classes, and they have to be in my syllabus, and I have to tie them to assignments. Like, I know they're important. I've never thought about them as being objectives for nonprofits themselves. Like, that is so smart. And your point about how nonprofits could be more reflective, intentional reflection, I thought was just genius. So really, really good point there.
Yeah. And I just think that her talking about ensuring that when you're trying to fulfill your mission, that you're looking at it through different lenses, because I think that is critically important. Like, as you all mentioned, like sometimes you can feel siloed because you're an IO psychologist, so you're going to come at things with your IO psychology brain.
Yes.
Oftentimes in nonprofits, we are so mission focused that we're focused solely on that one thing or those few things, when we could be looking at it from different angles with different nonprofits who are also working in our communities, building partnerships with each other that will benefit our mission, but may also benefit this other organization's mission. Excellent conversation.
Yeah. And to your point, a few years ago, the Kentucky Psychological Foundation, we updated our mission, vision, values, which is something that you should do. Had a strategic planning retreat, and we looked at our mission, vision, values,
Mm-hmm.
and we intentionally added community engagement.
We sure did.
Into our mission. And we did that because through that strategic planning process, we really were starting to talk about how we need to have better, long-standing, reciprocal relationships with other community partners, with other nonprofits, and how can we be more intentional about connecting and working together and collaborating with other organizations instead of thinking that we as KPF have to solve all of the psychology problems in all of our community. Like that, it's too much for any one nonprofit to do.
Right.
So being more intentional about engaging with other nonprofits in our community, I think helps us all to be able to like meet the mission of like bettering our community and the people that are around us.
Most definitely. And I think the thing that I would love to leave our listeners with is that if you're listening to this conversation and you're intrigued by it and you think that your organization could benefit from a student, which by the way, your organization could benefit from working with students, please reach out to the student affairs offices or the career development centers or the community engagement centers at your local college or university campus. We have been so enriched by working with students. Our producers of this podcast have been students who have come to us through these community engagement programs. We as a nonprofit, me as a leader, have benefited so greatly from their work and from building those relationships with them. I could not recommend it enough to leaders to allow space in your organizations for students to come in and really ground themselves in the community. I think it's so important that before students kind of launch themselves out into the world, that they feel connected to the place where they are. And so just creating that space for them. And this is a Sarah Burris guarantee that you will get something positive out of those relationships. I just could not recommend it enough.
Yep. Yeah, same. And I see it from the faculty side. So of course I see how the students would grow from these experiences. But I also, since I'm on the board of KPF, have been fortunate to see it from the organization side as well, of how can we help our very busy staff to be able to do this mission critical work in a way that is, again, mutually beneficial. You're not taking advantage of students by doing this collaboration. You're benefiting the students and you're benefiting the organization. So I have been fortunate to see it from both of those avenues. So, and I am incredibly impressed by Liz specifically and the work that she has been able to do. And I think that Pollyanna or not, I do think that that the work that we're doing here with this community engaged work is making a meaningful difference. And I'm going to stand by that.
I love it. I will plant my flag right next to your flag. I think.
Okay.
I literally don't know how else to say. Nonprofits, go out there and do this. Like, call your local college and university. Start
and I will say, like,
these relationships.
Even if you're not a nonprofit, we have other organizations are also able to be connected through meaningful work with universities. So I also have done work with government agencies. So we've done work for departments within Metro government. And even one semester I did a community engaged course with a local manufacturing firm. Like, they were not a nonprofit. They were a for-profit company, but we had a connection with them. They wanted us to help build a leadership training program. It benefited the organization. It benefited students, and it was a community engaged class. So it's not a guarantee that you have to be a nonprofit to make this work. But I think that most universities recognize that the nonprofits are the ones who need the help the most, and the students can gain a lot of valuable skills and can really feel like they're making a difference if they are working with our nonprofit partners.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved today's conversation, Courtney. It was the
Yep, me too.
best. It
Yep,
was the
it was
best.
great. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you, Courtney. And now to our favorite segment of the podcast, our Ripples of Gratitude. So, our Ripples of Gratitude segment is really an opportunity for Courtney and I to say someone or a group of people that we're grateful for, that we appreciate. And we hope that by sharing these with you all who are listening, that you will take that and show appreciation or gratitude to the people in your own lives. And Courtney, today, my ripple of gratitude goes out to the people who surround someone, who create community for somebody who's going through a difficult time. So Liz was talking about how when she started to her doctoral program, she had a baby and then she had baby number two, and she did not feel like she could have done all of those things if she did not have a community of people around her who supported her through that. And I have certainly felt that. I have my own community that will band together if I'm going through a hard time. And so I just really appreciate anyone who has the wherewithal to see in someone that they need some support, and to just jump in and be a support for that person. So my ripple of gratitude today goes out to the folks that recognize that somebody needs a community and helps to build that community for that person.
Yes, I'm thinking about the people who start the GoFundMe's, the people who start the meal trains, the people
Yes.
who organize the sitting. I'll come and sit over with you. I'll take care of your dog while you need to go out of town to go, take care of a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Just the people who are, jumping in and providing that organization and support when people are going through tough times. Because as Liz said, like, you can't do it alone. It really does take a community. So I think that's a really excellent ripple.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any new moms are out there who need somebody to hold a baby so you can take a shower or take a nap,
Please.
yes, we're right here. Courtney and I
Yes.
would love to assist in that way. Thank you. What about
Yes.
you?
Please call me to hold a baby. It's my favorite thing in the world.
It's
And I'm
awesome.
so grateful that like I've been doing this long enough as a teacher that my former students are now having their own children, and then they bring them to me and then they let me hold them. And it is the best thing in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. So my ripple is going to go to specifically, I was thinking about the faculty who are out there doing this community engaged work. I really want to say thank you to people who are spearheading this community engagement collaborations. It is a lot of work. It is a tremendous amount of work to have to retool a class, to have to navigate with a community partner, to have to add learning outcomes and tie them to new materials. I mean, that's always hard to like prep a course anyway, but I think faculty who are doing this community engaged work, like, I just want to recognize the amount of intensive work it takes to do that. And I think that of at least the people who are my colleagues who do it, we're not doing it because we get paid anymore. That's the same as any other course. We're doing it because we feel called to help the members of our community. So I almost feel like it's similar to your ripples, like the faculty they're gathering around and bringing support to the people who need it. And it's so much easier to do that when you have a Liz Todd Byron or you have somebody on your campus who can provide that institutional support.
Mm-hmm.
But it does take a lot of work. And I'm just really grateful to the people who are doing that as faculty to make these nonprofits be able to meet their mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Big kudos to those folks, and you included, Courtney. I have seen the syllabus for your community engagement class. It
It's
is
too many
lengthy.
pages.
It is lengthy. And I know how much work that you put into it. So absolutely, to all of the folks who are at universities who are creating these courses and providing these opportunities for students and nonprofits to create these relationships. Like, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We have talked a lot on this episode about how mutually beneficial it is to have this coursework available to students and to have these relationships available to nonprofits. So absolutely, thank you to those folks.
Yeah, it really does take a community.
It sure does.
There's my Pollyanna.
I love it. Courtney, I'm also thinking that perhaps we should give an honorary ripple today
Oh, to
to
whom?
to Lynn Manuel, well, Miranda.
To Lynn. Lynn,
To Lynn.
thank you for going on vacation
Thank you.
and taking the time while you were on vacation to go away from your job and read a book and have the time for creativity to be able to create, one of the best musicals out there.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will be singing all of those songs in my head for the rest of the day. So thank you, Lynn.
Yes.
The Burnout Room is sponsored by the Kentucky Psychological Foundation. If you'd like to help support our work bringing free mental health resources to Kentucky nonprofits, please consider donating at kentuckypsychologicalfoundation.org.
Huge thanks to our producer, Sophia Schindler, for her amazing work, and to my dad, Mike Russell, for composing our music.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this community. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to leave a comment about topics that would be most helpful for you or your organization.
We will see you next time.